Casey Johnson calls out Arturas Karnisovas on what's needed if you're going to ask for patience from Bulls fans. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also going to get into my top 5 draft prospects as it stands right now for the Chicago Bulls at number 12. We're going to talk about all that. Plus, let's put an end to the Josh Giddey, Giddey-Caruso trade drama. But we're going to get to all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Derek Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And Casey Johnson, hey, listen, the thing that I like about where I feel like the Bulls, the media that's been around for a long time, what I love about where they have been is that it seems like everybody's kind of at the point now where they're just ready to call a spade when it comes not only down to some of the stuff that AK has talked about, but the state of the team overall, right? Casey Johnson had a post in which he said this: if fans are going to give him patience, talking about AK, he's got to reward them by hitting on a first-round pick. And I think that that's great, right? And I know we know Matas is a hit, right? Like, it's as far as right now, by the data that we have, Matas is looking and trending towards being a hit. I talked about on yesterday's episode the things that he still has to work on and things like that. But there are still things that Matas has to work on. That's fine. Everybody's gonna have to work on things, no matter how good their rookie season is. But you need to continually hit on the first round picks. I said it in the Discord, right? Is that I don't think the Chicago Bulls are in a position to trade any first-round picks until we're a playoff team. You win a playoff series or you're close to winning a playoff series, that's when you can trade another first-round pick. In my personal opinion, up until then, keep your first-round picks, keep building, right? That's one of the things that I have, build organically, right? But you ask for patience in a time period where, like we talked about, like you ignored the floor, how bad the floor could be for Patrick Williams and Dalen Terry. You did, right? You got to start hitting on picks. When you want patience, patience has to come through succeeding through something, right? You built this first version of the team, which a lot of people still hold on to. We were number one team in the East before Lonzo went down. Okay, great. That was 4 years ago. Like, you don't get credit for that anymore. What have you done since then? And it's been a downward spiral for the Chicago Bulls since then. This is the first year since that season our record didn't get worse from the season before, right? And it's just stayed the same now. So I love that Casey Johnson had this to say about Arturas because, yeah, his track record on making decisions isn't the best. He's made some good deals over that time. Caruso was a really good contract. The current contracts of Kobe White, Aodosumu, really good contracts. Drum was a really good contract. Jalen Smith is a really good contract, right? So he's signed players to decent contracts. I don't want to act like there hasn't been some work done in that. There has been. But I think as well, when you look at it, if you want patience, that patience has to come because we see something that you're building. And maybe you are here, right? I personally have taken the opinion that Josh Giddey, Kobe White, these are two players that, they finished the season extremely strong. They have to continue it now, right? They have to show what they can do at the start of a season. What level of play can you maintain for a full season? That's the next step for Josh Giddey and for Kobe White, right? I think they're both in that same area of needing to show and prove. And that's perfectly fine, again, as a team. That's fine. You have to show and prove. At least you've shown something now that we're looking at and saying, hey, can you prove it? Instead of now showing, hey, we don't know what these guys can do. I'd much rather be in a position of looking at players and saying, all right, cool, do it again, than saying, do something like a Patrick Williams, right? So that's what you're at with this. I'm not of the place and of the mind where if you're not winning a playoff series, it's all for naught. That's just not the type of creative I am. That's not the way that I look at sports. But you have to be making forward progress if you want patience, because otherwise, what are we be patient for? For you to sit on your hands and continue to fail, continue to miss on trades, on draft picks, things like that? That's not what's going to happen here. There's been a lack of urgency from this front office and from this team literally since Lonzo Ball went down. it was the initial thing, and I think they legitimately thought Lonzo was going to make a return sooner, and so they wanted to keep the majority of that team together. But the lack of everybody else realized it was not going to happen. There's been no urgency on that. Everybody else realized Patrick Williams was probably not going to be it. About 2 years before, it seems like AK and Eversley have now reached this point where it's all on P. Will, right? They're not investing anything else with coaches and things in him, right? So it's that part of it. And leading into what we're going to do, June 25th, I believe, is the draft, if I'm not mistaken. Up until that point in the draft, like, you have to be showing us something. You have to be showing us something. And that is that's the pressure of being even the front offices that do win. You can only sit and rely on winning for so long. You look at the Denver Nuggets, look at the roster decisions that they've had to make since winning a title. The Boston Celtics just won a title last year. They got eliminated in the second round this year. They got some tough decisions to make about the path of their franchise and some of their contracts and some of their players that are still under contract, right? Even good teams to great teams don't sit on their hands as much as AK has over the last few years, right? And I'm not somebody that I look at and say, you got to make 15 trades between XYZ, but you got to be moving towards something. And this Bulls team has just been spinning its wheels. And now feels like we're about to start moving towards something. I'm not ready to crown their asses yet, for a great quote there. I'm not ready to do that when it comes down to it yet, but I am willing to say I see where this could be going. I see how much younger you've made your roster. I see that you added young players like Josh Giddey and even Jalen Smith, that you've added that. You got a rookie in Matas Buzelis. You gave time to Jalen and Dalen Terry to really to see who they are. But between this draft and between this year's trade deadline, we got to start seeing another movement in whatever direction that we're going, right? And that's why when on the episode where I talked about the Bulls having $60 million in expiring contracts that are movable, right? What are you going to do with that? Because if you sit on your hands and let those expire and you walk away from it with nothing, what are we doing at that point in time? What have you really gained? And so that's the place that this team is in, and I hope that it gets to start changing for this team. I really do hope that. That's not just words to say words. I think that this team could be on the precipice of being one of those young teams that are fighting, that's competitive, and hopefully, with making the right moves, making the right choices, we can get to be a team that can either make it out the play-in or hopefully miss the play-in outright. And I mean, so avoid the play-in as far as being a top 6 seed. But you have to continually work. Just looking at something and expecting it to change. Yes, we hope that Matas Buzelis is going to have a really nice leap from year 1 to year 2. But that's not what you can sell patience on. You can't tell us, well, we're going to see what Matas does. If Matas turns into a superstar in year 2, we're a playoff team. No, what moves are you making to make this roster make more sense? What fits are you looking at for this roster to help it make more sense? That's the important part of all of this. And that's what the Bulls have to do. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately, not fortunately or unfortunately, it's just real. AK's decision-making or lack thereof over the last few years has put it into the situation where now you're just, what are you doing, right? You've made a series of bad decisions. You've sat on your hands on several transaction times. Now you've been more active here recently. Great. But now you have this team that clearly needs something. What do? And I tell you what, I'm really looking at what you do with this first round pick, because if you go again high, like this high raw player with quote unquote, you're going to sell us on their upside, and then in the first year they don't play or they don't look like nothing, and we're waiting to 2 or 3 years just for them to consistently get on the basketball court, a la Dalen Terry. That's not what we're signed up for. That's not what this franchise deserves. If you want to be a team, or you want to be you want to be a team that you want your fan base to be patient on. It's just not that, right? So we'll see overall what happens, man. I hope the best for my team, but I'm prepared for just AK to do more AK things. It seems like every time AK has gotten started, like it's like he's the DeMar DeRozan of front offices. You pump fake, right? It looks good. You keep pump faking, but we need the shot to go in, my boy. Like, eventually DeMar does put in the shot or gets to the free throw line. We need something to happen. We need some motion. So let's hope that this is an offseason of motion. But talking about that, like we talked about the importance of the of the draft, right? So we've been going position by position. We've even been looking at sleepers and things like that. On today's episode, I want to talk about my top 5 favorite players for the Chicago Bulls at number 12, right? I'm going to warn you guys right now, there are no guards on this list. Well, no, there is one guard on this list, and we'll talk about why, but he's more of a swing than a guard. So the number one player that I have on my board that for my personal board for the Chicago Bulls is Thomas Sorber. Now, there is a concern about his foot. That mystery foot injury is a legitimate concern about him. And I think a lot of people do share that. And it's unfortunate. But, we'll see what Thomas Sorber can end up turning into. But I think that as long as that you have the medicals and you feel confident about that foot injury and it doesn't seem like something's going to linger on, I think when you look at Thomas Sorber at the 6'9", almost 6'10", the 7-foot wingspan, his ability to score in the post, right, as well as his ability to stretch it out a little bit more, a little bit with that mid-range shot. He's not a player that I really want to see taken off the dribble or anything, but I think he is a lob threat, even though he's not like this huge above the rim center. I think he still is a lob threat. In the same way that like Sabonis is at times, right? You just got to get him the ball. His defense, though, the defense and the switchability that he's going to have in the NBA, that's where it's special at. We need rim runners, which he can do, and we need bigs that can switch and that are really strong defensive bodies. And Thomas Sorber is that for the Chicago Bulls. You look at the type of defensive player that we need at the center position, even if he does end up being a 4, Thomas Sorber brings that. And having Sorber and Matas Buzelis, if that is your 4 and 5, I do think if you move Matas to the 3, you're going to affect some of his shot blocking. But if he stays at the 4 and you can get away with that, then I look at, hey, that's good. I know some people have some concern about the size, but like I said, Bam Adebayo, Jared Allen, these are two players that are 6'9", that have performed perfectly at the center over years, right? Now, yeah, you're moving Bam now to power forward. I think that's because they want him to do more offense, not because they looked at him and his performance at center and said it's been bad. And so I think that Thomas Sorber can be that level of player, that type of player, and I love Thomas Sorber here for this Chicago Bulls team. Next up, Rasheer Fleming. I love Rasheer Fleming's game. I don't understand why more people aren't talking about him. Honestly, in watching him play basketball, I don't know if it's just the age and the age bias, but watching him play the game of basketball, Draft Express posted a video of him. I think it was yesterday, maybe it was the day before, of him doing some drills. He was dribbling really well. The athleticism was there. We know the defense is there. The ability to stretch the floor is there. Rasheer Fleming is a guy that I get it that there's some questions about what his best position is going to end up being, but I don't think it's not that is he going to be bad at either position, right? That's the thing. I look at it very similar to like how they were talking about Will Campbell in the NFL draft. They were like, well, he might have to turn into guard. And people were using that as a knock when it was like, well, yeah, even if he does turn into guard, guess what? He's still going to dominate because he's just that good, right? So I think that Rasheer Fleming, the floor on Rasheer Fleming is ridiculous. I think at the bare minimum, he's going to turn into a solid defender, rebounder, shot blocker, and he can shoot threes. That sounds like a starter either way in the NBA level, in my opinion. And I'm really like Rasheer Fleming. I like what he can bring here for the team. He's more offensive, but still has the defensive capability when when you look at on-ball defense, things like that. I don't know how switchable he's going to be. 4s and 5s for sure. Some of the more athletic 4s could maybe be a little bit of trouble for him. It's starting into the NBA, but I like him a lot. The next guy up is the only guard/wing on this list. That's Cedric Coward. I love Cedric Coward's game. I know that there's some that little bit of lack of experience, and there's some Bulls fans and fans around the league that really look at him and they're like, what if he ends up turning into a bust? And I feel that, right? I can acknowledge, don't have to agree, but I can acknowledge where some of that concern is coming from for sure, right? But when you look at it, he has the positional size, he can catch and shoot, the athleticism, the off-ball defense, the on-ball defense. Yeah, he's almost 22 years old, but this dude can outright ball. Now, the question is do you take is it a reach there at 12? And I say this, it depends on how you see his ceiling. If you really do see, if the Bulls or any other team sees his ceiling as a potential star, then no, it's not a reach. It just isn't. People may say that it's a reach when they're evaluating this draft, but are they going to say it's a reach 2, 3 years down the road? That's the question that you have to ask yourself here. Cedric Coward is turning heads in this draft, I think, for a reason. I love his ability. I really like him here potentially for the Chicago Bulls team. I like what he can bring. He's a guy that I really do like in this draft for the Chicago Bulls. Next up, I fluctuated between putting Asa Newell here and this player, Juan Bridger, however you pronounce his name, Behringer. I really, and I know I talked about this kid before as somebody that I look at the end of the first round, but I tell you what, man, I really do think he's probably going to go higher than that. I think a team's going to take a shot higher than him on that. I love this kid in the first round. The more and more I watch his game, the fact he hasn't been playing basketball for that long, the fact that he's only 18 years old, he's already a rim runner, a shot blocker, the athleticism, the lob threat, and the upside is crazy. He's almost the center version of Cedric Coward, I truly do believe. If he played basketball in college over here in America, he'd be a lottery pick. I fully do believe that. I think people are using the rawness that he has, but he's already has the instincts. He's physically gifted. Yes, he is raw. Make no mistake about it. And that hasn't always necessarily worked out for the Chicago Bulls, but this is probably the craziest one on this list to have him as high up as I do. But I love Behringer on this team. I think that he's a guy that at the floor, I see him being a lob threat, defense, and shot blocker. Now, maybe that ends up turning into a bench big for you. Maybe, right? But I think his floor is Daniel Gafford. The offensive upside is still there. It's still ridiculous for him as well. And the shot mechanics, something to be said with those shot mechanics that I think they're pretty damn solid. But that's a guy that's definitely in my top 5. And then lastly, Derek Queen. Derek Queen is just, he doesn't bring any of the defense that we need or want at the center. He's not that. He's not a rim protector for real. He did average 1.1 blocks, but he only had a 3.8 block percentage. He does get into the passing lanes. He did average over a steal per game. The rebounding is going to be a bit of a concern for him as he adjusts to the NBA level. Only 18% rebound percentage, and he was a player that played on ball so much that he's like a Jokic in the way that he has to play on ball. But I tell you what, I look at this kid and watching him the eye test and watching him play basketball, I want dogs like that on my team. I'd be willing to take a shot on Derek Queen, and if it fails, I mean, I'd be surprised if it completely fails. You may have to change the makeup of your team a little bit, but I love Derek Queen for this team. I love him. I think the motor's there, all those type of things. You don't have to worry about him potentially becoming a P-Will. I don't think you have to worry about that at all. I love Derek Queen in this draft, and if he falls to number 12, even if a guy like Thomas Sorber is on the board, I'm taking a long, hard look and asking myself, do I want to go after the guy that I do think he can be the center of your offense, not just because of position. He can be the center of your offense with his playmaking on ball. He can be that. But there are questions on how effective that's going to be at the NBA level for somebody of his stature. But Derek Queen is somebody that I have to take a long, hard look at if he's there at number 12. All right, let me know what you guys think on those prospects. Who are your top 5 prospects for the Chicago Bulls in this draft and why? Let me know that down below. I know Eco Bean's going to have his Eco Bean list, which is always great. But I'm going to say this, right? I don't want to end the show on this one. I know that the Alex Caruso play has drummed up and restarted the conversations around the Alex Caruso Josh Giddey trade and what you can use to win. Like I said before, and it's not going to change my mind, both teams got exactly what they wanted out of that trade, period. The OKC Thunder were already a championship caliber team, and so even if they do win a title, yeah, you can use that and say, well, because they won a title, puts them over the Bulls for XYZ. The Bulls got what they wanted. They wanted to go younger. They wanted a player with youth and experience that could be their point guard of the future. They got that in Josh Giddey, and I think Josh Giddey still has a lot that he needs to prove as a player for sure, but I think he's on the verge of proving that, and I think that's perfectly fine for Josh Giddey. I'm not having and restarting every 3 days this Josh Giddey, let's reframe this the way that this trade happened or not happened. I'm not doing that every single day. It is what it is when it came down to that trade, and I think the Bulls got what they want. They want and needed. It does suck that the Bulls didn't get a first-round pick for a team that had a plethora of picks. Yeah, that sucks. But for the players that were exchanged in this, Josh Giddey, at 22 years old and what he's already shown in the NBA, he is the type of player you take a bet on. Now, people that have questions and problems with Josh Giddey's game, cool. I can understand that. But guess what? You were never going to get a perfect player for Alex Caruso. Never. Even if we would have got the draft pick. Even the play, you would have, because if they wouldn't have had the stigma of being on that OKC Thunder team and not playable in fourth quarters, they wouldn't have had that stigma. So it probably would have been a little bit more favorable on them overall. But I think it comes down to this personally is that, there's going to be no perfect player in that. You weren't going to get one. Josh Giddey is good. He has things that, of course, at 22 years old, he needs to continually work on. But like I said, Josh Giddey, he's put the target on himself now. You said at the end of the season, the player that you finish the season on is more like who you're going to be next season. Now go out there and prove it. You're going to have a shiny new contract to do it. Bulls fans need to see it, right? We're in the show me era of Chicago Bulls fandom. You got to go out there and show it. And that just is what it comes down to. Go out there and show it. And if he does, listen, shut up. right? If the Bulls start winning, if the Bulls are a playoff team next year, I think a lot of these kind of negative Nancy Bulls fans are going to start changing their tune. Now, the Bulls have to show continued development to do it, and that's fair, right? It's fair for a fan of a team to say, you got to show me. Like, yeah, cool, we made the play and we got eliminated again. Yeah, cool, we finished March strongly, but where's that going to be at the start of the season? It's fair for what we've been through as a fan base to have that mindset, make no mistake about it. But the people who are either everything's all for naught or everything's great, truth is usually somewhere between the two there, right? I think this Bulls team has to prove that going into next season, and we'll see if they can, right? They got to prove it. The target is now on them. They got to prove it because we're all looking, hoping, and willing to see if they're going to do it. If not, all right, we got some other questions to have, some conversations to have. But let's see what this team's going to turn into next season, right? Let's see that. I'm willing to wait on that, but the whole Josh Giddey, Giddey-Caruso trade, I'm not doing it no more. I'm not answering any more questions on it. I'm not taking any more voicemails on it. I'm tired of it because at the end of the day, it's going to be an ebb and flow thing. I've said it before. You judge a trade by how you feel about it and the pieces you get initially. You judge it again 2-3 years down the road, and then you judge it again a little bit further than that. I think that's how you have to deal with trades, and we'll see what happens with it and where it ends up being. But as of right now, the Bulls got what they needed and what they wanted. Now let's see if it turns out to be what the fans need and want, and it results in the winning, more consistent winning, and we shall see. But that's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See where it if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.